aviation and ground training combat expert. His name is Steve Gamache, G-A-M-A-C-H-E. Don't send him any hate mail. Steve has a 45-year background in aviation and ground combat operations. He is a commercial pilot, a flight instructor, an air traffic controller, an aircraft mechanic, and technical inspector. After high school, Steve joined the Air Force and worked in NORAD as part of the air defense community and was operationally connected to the Ballistic Missile Early Warning System, otherwise known as BMEWS. His degree is in aviation management. He has served as an airspace developer and ATC training office for the FAA. Steve is retired from the Army, where he was a sergeant major of the aviation training team, the Eagles, at the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California. Steve had the unusual experience of serving as an enlisted Black Hawk pilot during Operation Desert Storm. He has vast knowledge of several military and enlisted Black Hawk pilots during Operation read that line again. He has vast knowledge of several military technologies, such as GPS and night vision devices. After retiring from the Army, he worked on the battle staff at the NTC, planning and directing combat training activities of up to 8,000 soldiers and vehicles. He transferred to Alaska as the project manager of a system similar to the one at the NTC. He has traveled across the earth, conducting hundreds of operations and exercises for the U.S. and allied nations. He has spent most of his time overseas in the Middle East. So, all that being said, welcome, Steve, to the show.
Hey, Mark, what's up?
Not much, man. We've talked a few times already, getting ready for this show.
Yeah,
and it's been very, very interesting. I was so glad that you came forward and want to talk about this. So, first question on everybody's mind: how does somebody with this many different qualifications, especially in aviation, get into the flat Earth? What started you down the path?
this all started for me, Mark.
Mhm.
Over a course of years, I've observed things, right? Which
Yeah.
I'll talk about some of these things,
Okay.
and some of them, the U.S. government gave me wonderful tools to observe them with,
Yeah.
and so I've always had questions, a lot of questions that have come up, mostly about is the Earth really spinning? And is it really circling around the sun?
Mhm.
And that was always kind of the nature of my questions. But at the same time, I didn't dwell on that. I did not think about it all the time. There were times when it struck me as odd, or I'd be speaking with somebody about these things like, hey, how come these stars don't move, or something like that.
Mhm.
So about 9 months ago, I'm looking at the Drudge Report, and here's this headline that says, Saudi cleric says Earth does not spin. And I'm thinking, okay, what has this guy got to say? But by God, I wasn't going to click on that link, and I didn't. Because I didn't want to go down the stupid path.
Yeah.
And
it's too dumb to click on.
Right.
Yep.
And plus, I know these guys because I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East with, in various countries, both on a friendly and sometimes a rather unfriendly basis. But I know them, and I know they're actually really pretty nice people. So I wasn't going to mess with this guy. And, so I go back day after day, and in Drudge Report, the longer it gets on, the further down the column it goes. Eventually it ages off into oblivion.
Mhm.
And this thing was like right at the bottom, and I said, I can't let it go, man. I hit it. I clicked it. And here's, typical Saudi imam, they're all younger, and so is he, and he's, he has on his scholar's robe.
Mhm.
And, he's somewhere in the United Arab Emirates, and he's talking about, say, he got like a question from the audience. Hey, what does the Earth spin? And I'm not sure whether someone was asking, does the Quran say it or something?
Yeah.
But he speaks in Arabic, and there's a translator, and the guy's saying, look, the earth doesn't spin. And here's how we can tell. If you take off in an airplane and you're flying over to China,
Mm-hmm.
then all you got to do is just get up in the air and just wait for the earth to, spin to you and land, and you're right there.
The old argument, yeah.
Yeah. And conversely, if you're China and you're trying to come back home, well, you'll never make it.
Yeah.
That type argument.
Yeah.
He said, besides, don't believe everything that you see on television or hear from the United States about they went to the moon, because that was all kind of done in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I clicked off it. That was the end of it, although there was, a science discussion on the end of it, which I happen to disagree with. But, I thought about that for a while because I've done a fair amount of flying in my time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've flown airplanes and I've flown helicopters. So I'm pretty well up on that. But the whole question of does the earth spin came flooding back to me.
Yeah.
All based on what this guy said. And I learned to fly before I learned to drive. So, we would be flying around and, teaching me to fly and stuff. And the thing that bothered me was that horizon never dropped. And no matter how high we went, first we're at 7,000 feet, then we're at 10,000 feet, and then later we go up to 12,500. And this horizon it looks the same. It never changes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can't figure that out. And I ask him about it. And he says, well, you can't see it fall because the earth is too large.
Yeah, the Neil deGrasse Tyson argument. Yeah.
Yeah. And that bought it for me for a while.
Yeah.
And I went with that. Well, later in life, I became a flight instructor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm teaching people to fly. And I get the same question from the students. And I'm giving the students the same answer that my father gave me when I was learning to fly.
Mm-hmm.
But I always did it with a level of reluctance, almost hesitatingly. And it would even, got to bugging me because student pilots do weird things with the airplane. You got to really watch them because they can stall that thing out. And then it's a bad day for everybody.
Yeah.
But that horizon, and all these unusual attitudes, especially on landing, and when you're putting on flaps and the nose is going down and stuff like this, that horizon is always there and it never changes. So back to 200 proofs that the earth is not a spinning ball,
mm-hmm.
is that suddenly I realized that either the earth is flat or this thing is like huge, man.
Yeah.
Like 10 times what they're trying to tell us it is.
Yeah.
And because what you're seeing, why that horizon doesn't fall, is you're looking at, for all intents and purposes, an infinite plane that extends out in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't fall. So to me, I came to that conclusion. It's either super huge, not what we believe it to be, or it's a level plane.
Yeah.
And it could be in the vicinity of infinite.
Yeah.
So that was the day that, I'm singing like hallelujah to myself. Because this is a question I've had since I was 14 years old, when I first was controlling one of these flying machines myself.
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to know why it doesn't appear the way academically I believed it should appear if I was on a ball.
Yeah.
The gunnery thing speaks to the spinning of the Earth because of the so-called Coriolis effect.
Yeah.
And nobody takes that into consideration. Nobody. I had heard about the Coriolis effect as a flight instructor, but I'd heard it in different terms.
Yeah.
It basically, says that because of the spin of the Earth, the air in the northern hemisphere is deflected to the right, and in the southern hemisphere deflected to the left.
Mm-hmm.
You can read a lot about it. There is, and when you take your test for whatever your, private pilot, commercial pilot, airline transport pilot, there'll be a question in there on it. You just have to answer it right, correctly.
Yeah.
Saying deflects to the right. Okay, good. You got it. Nobody figures this stuff in. Nobody. Winds are critical in flying.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how large or how small your airplane is, it's even worse for helicopters.
Yeah.
But so everybody just gets the winds aloft forecasts, and they, do their flight planning based on that. And there's nobody calculating in any kind of, spinning Earth deflection or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't occur. So they'll do their planning based on the winds aloft forecast for the altitude that they're flying at, and then they just make adjustments in the air as needed, which usually there's not a whole lot needed. In the adjustments, the forecasts are usually pretty accurate. So that's it. Nobody pays any attention to that. How I know about this
mm-hmm.
is shooting. So I've done a lot of shooting.
Okay.
In my my time.
Yeah.
And because shooting is critical to what we do in the Army. That's, what we're all about.
Yeah.
And accurate shooting is the best. And our best shooters are our snipers.
Mm-hmm.
And the best amongst the snipers, and I'm going to get it from the Navy SEALs here.
Go ahead.
The best snipers are the Marine Corps.
It's all right. They'll tout themselves as being that.
And those guys will. They wear Bill Blass uniforms, man.
Nice.
But you look in all of these manuals on, sniping, man, there's not one, that word Coriolis doesn't even appear in there.
Yeah. And
they have to take in all kinds of environmental factors. The biggest one is wind.
Mm-hmm.
But also they've got to be aware of humidity.
Sure.
Because the higher the humidity, the thinner the air, the farther the bullet goes, actually.
Yeah.
And the air pressure.
Yep.
They've got to calculate that stuff, or at least be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so these items are critical for these guys making their shot. Now, if you take a regular guy, say like me, or most of the guys that have been, all we're going to do, we're going to aim our rifle and we're going to point it at what we want to hit, and we're going to squeeze the trigger,
mm-hmm.
and hopefully we get a hit. Usually we do. I mean, we know what we're doing.
Sure.
Nobody is talking about, man, I let this thing fly and that Earth is spinning. Let's see which way is it going, and it's going at this speed from what latitude, or,
exactly.
I'm at, and I got to lead this guy by 4 inches. All you're going to do is miss him by 4 inches.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen. You aim steady on, and you only lead him if he's moving.
Yeah.
And, you'll hit your target.
Yeah.
So they've got a program out, believe it or not, where you can steer a .50 caliber bullet that's fired out of a sniper rifle,
Sure.
one of these Barrett 50 caliber rifles.
Yep.
And so some of these, it's fiercely competitive, and some of these guys working on, and these scientists have tried to engineer the thing to have the Coriolis effect built into the aiming device that's on this thing. And they take into account all these tables of what's their GPS position relative to the latitude that they're at.
Yeah.
What's the magnetic heading of their gun target line.
Yeah.
Plus all the other atmospheric things, air pressure, air density.
Yeah, but if you're going to build in something, if you're going to put everything into a super scope, something you can guide a 50 caliber bullet, somebody's going to, say I'm sure it was the last thing they added. It's like, you know what, we might as well include the Coriolis effect because why not, right?
Right, and then they do, and they miss the target, and they're shooting at ranges of over a mile.
Yeah.
And if they take that out, they hit the target. And they're like scratching their head like, I don't figure this out. But, they are, like all of us, they're wedded to, they're married to what they've been taught.
Yeah.
Nobody uses this Coriolis thing.
Yeah. We
don't use it flying. We don't use it in our flight planning. Nothing, The shooters don't use it. Long-range shooters don't use it.
Yeah.
You'll hear every once in a while the artillery guys talk about it as though they use it.
Yeah.
But they don't figure it out. They'll say, well, it's factored into the AFATADS or whatever fire control system that they happen to be using at the time.
Sure.
Yeah, the other thing about this whole spinning thing that freaked me out was a bad admission on my part. I'm one of the guys in 5th grade that flushed this information the instant I passed the quiz on it.
Really?
Yeah, which was how fast does the Earth spin? How fast do we travel around the sun?
Yeah.
And this kind of stuff. And I looked into this in association with, looking into more of a geocentric model in a flat enclosed plane. And if you believe the sun-centered heliocentric teachings, then you come to realize, it's not a realization, it's being taught that the Earth spins at the equator at 1,040 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That is faster than the speed of sound.
Quite a bit faster.
And as a matter of fact, it's 1.35, the speed of sound.
Yeah.
That's faster than an F-18 flies at low altitude.
Yeah.
And, okay, then take that one step further, we are circling the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're doing that at like 66,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
In order to make it around, based on what they say our distance is in 1 year. But this thing is expanding out at near the speed of light to get back to these incredible speeds.
Sure.
So, we've got to believe that we are traveling at near light speed, chasing our sun through a galaxy at 500,000 miles an hour while we're rotating around it at 66,000 miles an hour, and we ourselves are spinning at 1,040 miles an hour, and our hair barely gets rustled in the wind outside.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of motion.
That's a lot of motion. That is too much motion.